And we will get started with the special meeting of the East Bay Charter Township Board. We'll call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll do roll call attendance.
Lyle.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Walters.
Present.
Bartlett.
Yes.
And Friend.
Here.
And it's noted that M. Cortate and S. Cortate are absent and excused.
Correct. Okay, on the agenda, review for conflict of interest. We do have the year-end budget amendments and a agreement with Cool Hand Holdings LLC, which is truly an enforcement process that we'll talk about with the board. Are there any conflicts?
No.
Okay, and we'll move to approval of the agenda. It is a special meeting, so we can't add anything to the agenda because we don't have all members present. Not that we were looking to add anything anyway, but just noting that. I will ask if we can flip these so that Nicole can be on her way and not sit through budget amendments as she needs to travel in the weather. Is that fine with everyone?
Sure.
Okay, is there an approval of the agenda as presented with that adjustment?
I make the motion.
Okay, the motion is made by Cook and supported by Bartlett. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by no? Okay, we'll move forward with that agenda. We do have an opportunity for public comment. Public is welcome to come up to the podium and give us their perspective. And do you have the public comment rules there? Might be on the, I'm not sure if it's on the back of this that you typically read,
Here we
or
go.
in general, let me just recap for everybody.
Yeah.
We'll just make it real simple. Public is welcome to come up and state their name and their address if they wish, and give us their perspective, and you have 3 minutes to do so. And then the next person would come up, and that's the process that we would go through. So if everybody understands that and we can forego all of the specifics on the public comment, happy to do that. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Okay, we'll move forward. The agenda says possible closed session, consultation with Township Attorney on written legal opinion regarding enforcement agreement with Cool Hand Holdings LLC with possible action in open session following closed session. Legal opinion provided during closed session. The board is provided after the budget amendment items with the attorney-client privileged memo, also with the settlement agreement, and that is released, and we do have copies of that. And also with emails from legal counsel or with legal counsel requesting the document. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Claire and to Nicole, but I will tell you kind of why this was on your agenda. So normally zoning enforcement is handled administratively through planning and zoning. And sometimes enforcements do involve a court case. This one does, as there was a ticket issued. And in trying to come to an agreement on how we can proceed in getting compliance with this, there is the agreement that was drafted. There's been typically a lot of these things, there's other enforcement that is just handled by planning and zoning and or myself, and the board doesn't really see. But I know that you have heard about this property, Arbutus Lake Rentals, and some others, and so I preferred to have the discussion here at the township board level so that you'll be aware of it, and also public is aware of any of the particulars, so that there's not a modern version of the telephone game happening, right? So that anybody can reference this meeting and understand what the what the enforcement, what the alleged, initially, and the alleged violation was, what the investigation resulted, the ticket, and so forth. So does that kind of set the table, so to speak, as Dan says, on the planning commission meetings?
Yes, that's a perfect kind of overlay of what's going on. The first order of business I'd have is to ask the board if they would like to discuss this in open session or in closed, because my memo does go into, a lot of some of the details about, the settlement and the case itself. It's up to the board. If you don't want to go into closed session, we can talk about it in open session. It would just do a little motion saying, to discuss an open session, and then we can go forward from there and we can discuss everything out in the open if that's what the board would like to do.
What would the board's preference be? I will say, personally, I don't see anything in the memo that is that earth-shattering. I mean, it's pretty basic overview or, related, kind of apprising you of why the agreement is in front of you, but it's up to the board's decision.
I don't have any problem in open session.
Is there a legal recommendation as to whether it should be open or closed?
It's up to you guys.
Okay.
I mean, if the township board were to make any decision, it would be in open session anyway. Just kind of the rationale behind why legal is suggesting the settlement agreement the way it is what you discuss in closed session. But again, the settlement agreement is out in the open right now anyway, so.
Okay.
I'm kind of open.
That's fine.
Okay, we'll just continue with that. All right. So
Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah, it'd be probably cleaner, so we can just discuss so you're waiving the attorney-client privilege on that memorandum, basically.
I would
Discussing.
make the motion to waive the attorney-client privilege on the memorandum. Okay, the motion is made by Friend and supported by Walters. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote on that.
Friend,
Yes.
Walters,
Yes.
Lyle,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
and Bartlett.
Yes.
Okay, so we will go ahead and discuss that. And Claire, if you would maybe kind of take us back and how the alleged violations came to the planning and zoning's attention, and then what steps that you took in an investigation.
Sure. So this began about 2 years ago, just with some complaints that came into Planning and Zoning Department. I believe the complaints began related to the boat usage, concerns around safety. There was also, so I would say we have, over the past year or more, been looking at kind of a holistic number of different items related to the cabin court. So this is a traditional cabin court. It's been in operation since the 1950s or before. We have, historical records that showed that there were 14 units there, very small, but kind of over time, some of the items that we were taking a look at is kind of historically, how many units are there? Have some been removed? Have some been replaced? Some of the common areas, how have those been used in the past? How are those currently being used? There's been some upgrades there, so kind of what are those upgrades? Where have they been? Were they built kind of within that 50-foot buffer? Are they outside of the buffer? Are they accessory uses? Kind of going back to the boating activity, are the boats being rented to the guests of the cabin court or to other, members of the public, and kind of how the boat operations are going? So those were kind of all of the issues that we were looking at. And I'm trying to remember the first ticket that we issued, because I know there was a number of different concerns about enforcement, but I believe the first ticket was related to the boating activity. And
No, it was, the ticket that was issued was related to some of the buildings that were not dwellings, for
that's
renting,
right, yeah.
and they had turned those into that. So there was a couple, like the laundry that had been turned into somewhere where someone could rent and sleep for the night. Another building that was there previously was turned into something that they could sleep in. That was a change of use and almost an expansion of the non-conforming use, and that was the ticket that we had written.
Yeah, it was the boathouse.
Yeah. So the ticket that was written is in the district court. It's a municipal civil infraction ticket for a violation of the zoning ordinance. And that, this matter is kind of unique in that the cabin court itself is a non-conforming, a legal non-conforming use. So it can exist, you know, but it can't expand its existence. But it can still operate as a cabin court, as a resort today, but it can't expand that. So the original, I think it had 14 units. You can't have 20 units now on that property for renting out. Historically, there was boats rental there. You know, you can still do that, but it has to be maintained towards the guests of the resort and all that, things like that. So we issued the ticket. Bullhand Holdings LLC retained an attorney. The attorney and I began discussions about how to resolve this matter to become in compliance with the zoning ordinance, which we try to do in every enforcement case. Sometimes that happens at the formal hearing at the district court level. If they don't have an attorney retained. Sometimes it happens before that and during that time. We had a meeting, a settlement meeting, trying to see what the township wanted the property owner to do to come into compliance. And the settlement agreement in front of you is basically the fruition of that meeting with them. So the settlement agreement goes into.
Before you go into that, just one second, just to be clear and kind of synopsize with Claire. So there was an alleged violation, you looked into it, found a violation, and then the tickets were issued. And that's the standard course for an enforcement, correct? Okay.
Yeah, I would say, and I apologize, I'd forgotten what we had written a ticket for first, but we, kind of the approach that we were taking was start with one. There was some other ongoing investigations at that time, and the settlement agreement is an attempt to get the entire property into compliance to address kind of holistically all of the concerns that we had related to the property, to make sure that the property is in compliance kind of holistically beyond just the specific issue that we first issued the ticket for.
So there were alleged violations that were brought to your attention, plus you found additional other issues there and trying to wrap all those together. Okay, very good. Standard process. Okay. Sorry, Nicole, go ahead then with that. You were going to talk about the agreement. Oh, yes.
How many tickets have been issued?
One.
So the agreement kind of goes into it's a non-conforming use. You know, the township recognizes that it's a non-conforming use. There is a survey that is incorporated into the agreement as well, outlining the property and where things are on the property.
Now, one thing, let me just, non-conforming use, because there are a lot of people who say it right and left, but they're not exactly sure what a non-conforming use is. So non-conforming use is something that, some land use that's going on that would not be allowed under the current zoning ordinance. However, it was in place before that ordinance and was allowed with the previous ordinance.
Correct. So in this case, cabin courts were allowed in a previous zoning ordinance. Then that zoning ordinance was amended early 2000s, I think, around there. I'm not sure of the date, to eliminate the cabin court use. But this property was a cabin court in existence prior to that change, and so that property can now carry over that use. In a similar vein, if you had a house that was a duplex on your property, you had a duplex on your property, and then that your property was then zoned, well, you could only have a single family. Your duplex could remain as long as you didn't expand that use. So the footprint couldn't expand, you couldn't add, another duplex on your property, obviously, but, you could still have that duplex. The same is here with the cabin court. So the cabin court use itself can't expand. So you can't have more than the 14 units. You can't have any more intense activity on it than what has historically been happening. things along that nature. So that's kind of what a legal non-conforming use is for everybody. Settlement agreement kind of incorporates that, the recognition of the non-conforming use. There is a survey that, on the property, that you can kind of see where things are located on the property, where the rentals are, and then things of that nature. And then, I'm just kind of going point by point on that, on this, so. There are existing units, 1 through 10, and if you look on the survey, you can see those are numbered there. Those are all rental dwellings. They're part of the non-conforming use. They're already in existence. Units 11 through 14 were not, they were there, but they were not a physical building. So they were units that you could pull maybe like a camper in or something and be there. Under this settlement agreement, they would have a revised and updated survey with the, they're amending those 3, 11, 12, 13, 14, those 4, to be more cohesive and kind of move them away from where they are on the current survey, which is close to setbacks and things like that, and they're try to make it more conforming, basically. for
And
setbacks.
does the property owner, the person who was issued the ticket, it is their responsibility to prove that is what existed previously, so there was some proof of that?
Yes, yep, we had pictures, and I think you have in your files, pictures of.
We have when they were condominiumized, which was in 2008. That was kind of what we are going back to. There were 14 units that were condominiumized. Each one of those were rental units that were rented out. We have the dimensions of each one of those that are on file with the assessing office.
Glenn, you have a question?
Yes. On the one survey sheet that I have, it shows it's lot numbers, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm assuming by going through all these maps that this company, this survey company went in, resurveyed it, and broke all those lots up. Is that correct?
When they were condominiumized.
Okay, did they go through the township board or the planning to condominiumize? So, I guess the question is legally, how can it be condominiumized if it's never been approved?
So the lots that you're talking about are part of the legal description. That's, there is, the property is made up of meets and bounds property and sort of a platted lot. I'm not sure what the plat is called, but I believe that's where you're coming up with the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 17, and 24.
Pinehurst Resort.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that survey is the entire property, and you have meets and bounds property on one side, and then you have lots on the other. So that's what makes up the property as a whole. And then that is also depicted in the legal description. You have, part of lot 18, there's part of lot 8, that's part of the lot, the legal description for the property. So it's not when they were condominiumized. When they were condominiumized, which is ownership, you'll see, this is how it would be on this page.
Right.
That's how it was condominiumized. These unit 1, unit 2, unit 3.
Yeah,
I think the
understand
question is why they didn't
condominium
come.
side. What I'm trying to find out is, if that was changed from lots originally, the condominiumized, it never went through the township, is that my understanding? Then, I guess, I'm trying to understand why we're here then. Because it doesn't seem to me that when something was done and it wasn't done legally, that we didn't want to discuss it.
So I think.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out if somebody went in there and went through a surveyor here just recently, and it, not a good taste in my mouth. But the thing is, that if it was done, but it was never recorded, never been recorded because it never went through the township, am I correct?
Can I make a clarification? So I think that it was recorded. It didn't go through the township, and my understanding is there's a differentiation between, so when it became condominiumized, it was recorded. It was recorded with the Register of Deeds. Because it changed ownership and not land use, then there was no approval that went through the zoning process. That's my understanding. So there was no review
Correct.
because it was a cabin court, it condominiumized, it continued to function as a cabin court.
Correct, you didn't need to have township approval from zoning or anything like that for the change in ownership. And the use itself was the same.
No, not for the change of ownership, but for the change from lots to condominium. When you condominiumized it, I thought everything had to go through the, no, they don't even have to go through a township when they create a condominium.
A site condo does, and there's specific zoning requirements for like a site condo. But when something condominiumizes, say it's like an apartment building that's rentals, and then they decide to condominiumize that apartment, each one of the units, that would not trigger zoning review because it's the same use, it's the same multifamily use of the
Okay.
land.
So it goes, the settlement agreement goes back into basically the location and footprint of the amended units 11 through 14 on the picture. Those are gonna be changed slightly. You can see where 13 is very close to the property line, even on the picture. So they're changing it to where they can be more in compliance with, current setbacks and everything like that. You're changing, I think, some of the designations on them. So the, like the structure that's depicted as the garage on the survey is gonna be the new unit 11. And so the old unit 11, would not be there anymore. It's gonna be changed to that garage structure on that survey. The dwelling east of unit 11 shall be, so they're changing that one, to unit 14, and removing unit 14 from everything. So the number of units and the square footage of units are going to be the same that was previously. The configuration of rectangle versus square might change, but the overall square footage of the units are supposed to be the same.
And we're also ensuring that nothing is closer to the water
Right.
than what it previously was, so.
Yeah, they're complying with all of the setbacks for these kind of changed units that they're gonna figure out.
And where you may have found rentals that shouldn't have been rentals, just for clarification, those are not being normalized through this agreement. They're just not allowed.
So the boathouse is not allowed, that's the building closest to the water. And originally, historically, it was a kind of a convenient, I don't want to say convenience store, but a tech, it sold goods, I guess, to the patrons of the cabin court. That cannot be a dwelling unit. The garage depicted on the 2008 survey map will be changed into a dwelling unit because they're getting rid of one of the older dwelling units that they already had previously. So that's one thing. The laundry unit, there's a laundry house that was, that they had tried to make into a dwelling. That is no longer going to be a dwelling. That's going to be stay the laundry unit and a possible office space for the cabin court.
So no expansion.
No expansion, no. And like I said, the garage itself would be a dwelling unit now, because we've changed it, but they're also getting rid of one of the older dwelling units. So there's no more numerous dwelling units, and the structure is already there. So it's not, you're not building a new one.
Question. You mentioned is it unit 13 that they're gonna what are they gonna do, move it, chop it, to get, away from the property line? What's,
Yep, so units 12 and 13 shall be located no farther north than a line drawn between the northernmost part of former unit 11 and the southernmost part of unit 8. So if you look, they're moving 12 and 13 away from that east, no,
Yeah, the eastern property.
eastern property line, and trying to move it so it's more in the center of that. So they're gonna be compliant with the setbacks, and they won't be going closer to the water at all.
okay, the other question I had is, and I read someplace in all this material, that, something about they wanna remodel them. Now, if they remodel any of them, can they make them bigger? Is that what they're wanting to do?
No, so the square footage needs to be, the ones that are in, so units 1 through 10, you know, they can remodel those as they are. You know, they can't expand, they can't make it bigger or anything like that. The 11 through 14, the shapes of those might change, but the square footage of those are gonna stay the same. So they're not gonna be an expansion of more square footage for dwellings, if that answers your question. So say, I don't know the square footage just off the top of my head, but say, the old unit 11 is 100 square feet, the garage, the new unit 11 might be 200 square feet, but unit 13 is gonna be 100 square feet less. Does that,
So they can make a little one and make a really big one,
no,
because the total square footage is still the same, but they've made a big one and a little one. Because you've got 4 units that are 1,107 square feet.
yes, and so the combined total foundation area footage for the amended 11 through 14 cannot exceed the original 11 through 14. So they cannot expand it.
But they could make a very large one and 3 small ones.
That could be a possibility, but the square footage is not going to be it's not going to be expanded. That's not an expansion because the square footage is the same, and that's,
No, if you were taking one away and changing it, basically you'd have to construct something new. And that would trigger other types of mechanisms.
But aren't they,
They are
They are
constructing
doing that.
4 new units.
there's 4 new units going out here, so they could make one that's 4,000 square feet and 3 that are 100 square feet.
So they,
is that the square foot? I don't know if that's
The square footage is on this map,
the,
right here.
I thought we were keeping them, each unit to the,
yeah, it should be to where each unit should be the same or similar square footage. So of the 4 units that they're trying to amend, 11 through 14, not all of the units.
so it says under number 4,
Yep.
Cool Luke did not abandon its use of any of its structures of the 14 structures that were legally, I'm adding this part, that were part of the lawful nonconforming. Retains the right to build, rebuild, repair, or replace the 14 dwelling units, provided the footprint of any replacement structure shall not exceed the existing footprint. Or where no structure presently exists, the dimensional envelope shown on the amended survey.
yeah, I mean, that was the intent, was that each individual unit would be the same size.
Well, it's not only the intent, that's what's
Yeah.
written here.
Yep.
Yeah, so the dimensions might change,
Okay,
like
and I
that.
was confused by how
Yeah.
Nicole said that we could go from a 100, do a 200, and then take away from
Yeah.
another one.
I misspoke on that, I apologize for that. Going through and trying to remember everything, that was my mistake.
Okay,
I misspoke.
okay. I,
So instead of, and I'm making up stupid numbers, instead of a 10 by 10, it could be an 8 by whatever, more than a 10. Yeah.
8 by 12 or something.
Yeah.
Something similar.
I've got a question. So all of these surveys that are in here, there's a cover sheet, there's a unit plan, a survey plan, I think there was a utility plan in here somewhere. These are all dated 2008.
Yes.
Is what's presented here, is this the existing?
No. And that,
So, yeah, yes, the survey, the exhibit B, which is what you're talking about, that should be what is existing where the units are today. But they have 180 days to amend that survey with the unit 11 through 14 to put them where they need to be.
yeah, so I think two important pieces of the settlement agreement. One is that, to the best of our knowledge, this is where the structures exist, but again, it's very old and outdated. And so having a surveyor come on site and accurately depict every single one of these units and where they're located is going to provide that was part of the information that we were looking for when we originally submitted the ticket. And kind of what we're trying to get to is an accurate survey.
Yeah,
So
I mean-
right now, I think this is pretty accurate to what's on site, but the 180 days will give the property owner the opportunity to go out and survey exactly what's there, including any type of accessory structures, decking, all those types of things, to give us the exact location, dimensions of what's on site and exactly what's proposed.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess it's somewhat of a chicken and an egg argument, because you know, in a perfect world, we would have that survey to make a decision on tonight. I mean, this is old information. We don't know if it's 100% accurate. I mean, going a little bit further, there's a very crude sketch of some, landscaping or something that they're gonna do with the hot tub, that I have a tough time, kind of making definitive decisions based on a 2-page written narrative that's
But-
a little vague.
Yeah, but understand something, this is not a planning commission or a site plan review. This is an agreement going through an enforcement process.
Sure.
Not only that, it doesn't conclude the enforcement process. This states what will be adhered to, and that there is a time component of 180 days for them to comply with that. It does not absolve them of anything that is in the zoning ordinance. Nothing from the zoning ordinance is relaxed. They are, though, and they have the right to maintain their lawful nonconforming to the extent that they can prove that to council and planning and zoning, which they've done. So it's a little bit different than, say, taking a look at, say, like a Doug Mansfield plan.
Yeah.
When they're going through planning commission.
This also has specific dates and benchmarks, so we can say, okay, this now has passed, you have not given us this, you're in violation of this agreement, we can go through with the enforcement process again. So that's what.
Yeah, I get that. It's just, I guess sort of the engineering mind in me has trouble, working towards a paragraph written around a description
Yes.
of what could be, a lot of technical details that we're missing.
So remember, when you're doing enforcement, the goal is always compliance,
Right.
right? The goal is always compliance. And compliance, and that's what we're getting through this document. It's not necessarily that they go out and spend X number of dollars on on a type of a site plan survey,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Well, I guess that kind of brings me maybe to another question. I probably should have asked this earlier. Sounds like we fast forwarded through a lot of the 2-year history of kind of what's going on here, but typically, you said like the normal process is we issue a ticket, y'all did an investigation, you found that there was a violation, you issued a ticket. How did we fast forwarded through all the stuff that got us here? Obviously, they retained an attorney. Is this a lawsuit? Or is the township being sued, or are they just disputing it in?
The enforcement process, when you issue a ticket,
Yep.
we do a formal hearing in the district court. That's the normal process.
Okay.
During that time, the defendants are allowed to retain counsel which happened here. Defendant's counsel and I spoke, trying to come up with compliance, so the defendant can be in compliance with the zoning ordinance, which resulted in this settlement agreement. Not only for the ticket, but for other investigations that the zoning department was looking at the time. So instead of writing, I don't know, 5 tickets, we wrote 1, and we're trying to encompass all the settlement into all of the potential violations into this agreement.
Okay, I'm following a little better, because in other circumstances, I guess the more vanilla cases, you would issue a ticket, there was something obvious, and it would just be taken care of, and you would
Yes.
end up in court, right? You would.
So, practice is if you issue a ticket, we always do we do a request for formal hearing to kind of dangle that court date in front of the defendant.
Right.
Sometimes we'll end up in court, sometimes we'll resolve it at court, to where the judge will always ask, have you had a chance to talk to the defendant? Sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't. If we haven't, we go and talk to them, sometimes they'll come to an agreement. We just had one recently that happened. We came and we got a consent judgment, and we put it on the record, we had it signed, and we took care of it at that time.
Mhm.
This is not normal to come to the board, to be honest.
Yeah,
Normally, this consent agreements happen with legal counsel and the planning and zoning department, sometimes the supervisor is involved, to wrap things up like that. But not necessarily the whole entire board unless it's a bigger case,
yeah,
like in circuit court. But this is a district court case where it's a municipal civil infraction, it's a formal hearing, so it's not really as involved as a trial or anything like that.
Sure.
So.
I'm not really entirely sure that Nicole was too thrilled that I, if I could say that, brought it to the board, because typically this is handled administratively, and you would sign off on that. As she mentioned, we just had a case very similar that at court, the judge asked if the two parties had had a chance to discuss things. They went into a closed virtual, what do they call it, like a conference room, breakout room, and were able to talk about what that individual could do to come into compliance. They decided to come into compliance, and so that consent agreement was filed. And that's more standard. This, we've had a lot of FOIA requests regarding this, and so rather than do it through the normal procedure where planning and zoning and legal has done all of this work and then it's signed off on, and the property owner comes into compliance and is adhering to the zoning ordinance, so you have gotten out of enforcement what you want, which is compliance. But doing that, there's not a lot of, I don't want to say there's not a lot of, it is a transparent process, but there's not a lot of overt transparency, so to speak, from the board knowing about the situation or the public knowing about the situation. So I wanted to provide that opportunity here. Go ahead,
The
Nicole.
board is getting a lot of nitty-gritty details on this case to try to keep, to get out of it. But I know Claire probably updates you guys saying, hey, we've had enforcement cases, we've done this, these are the outcomes. But that's normally what you guys kind of see. So you're kind of peeking behind the curtain, sort of say,
right.
on this one.
Glenn?
I got a couple of questions. Number one, on moving 12 and 13, doing any remodeling, that has no effect. I mean, they can do that by right, correct? Or not?
Yes, they can remodel and they can do that. If they are moving a building, they might have to get more permits from planning and zoning, just if they're like building a building or something. But generally, that's, yes, you can remodel, you can put new windows in, you can do that. Obviously, they might have to get building department permits, things like that, but that's not necessarily a planning and zoning. I don't know your zoning ordinance off by heart, so I don't think you have anything in that provision for that, but.
Okay. The other question is,
Don't take that as Nicole doesn't know our zoning ordinance. She's saying she doesn't know it verse by verse by verse without referring to it. And
Yeah.
Claire absolutely knows it.
the agreement is if this is passed, that they can put in a dock for 10 boats and people can bring their own boats. Can they do that now?
They're,
Yes
they're,
or no? I mean, that's the
mean-
question I'm looking at.
yes, I believe they're doing that now.
And they can build 10 boat docks?
Yes, historically speaking, they had spaces for 10 boats, I believe. You have the historical knowledge. And so they're going to be able to do that. And overnight guests at a resort, you know, they're bringing boats they're bringing their toys to northern Michigan. They're for the overnight guests. There are also a provision in there where the resort has, I think, two boats that they can rent out. Four boats, sorry. 4 boats that they can rent out to their overnight guests if they don't bring a boat. So there's that as well.
Okay, but all of this that I've asked about, they can do without even going through all this that we're talking about, correct?
Claire, do you want to talk about the lawful non-conforming?
Yeah, so part of what we did with the number of boats that they could have is that we based it off of prior precedent that was set through circuit court, or district court, through circuit court, with boats basically taking the square footage. So we took we have photos from that predate our zoning ordinance, dated 1950s, that shows 12 boats. And so basically taking those 12 rowboats with the square footage, we came up to 4 pontoon boats.
That
are owned by the resort. That can be owned by the resort, a maximum.
And you can't stop overnight guests from bringing boats to the resort. I mean, it's like you can't, it's an incidental use of a resort type of use.
How would they put the boats in the water?
The 4 pontoons that are owned by the resort would be able to go in the water off of the resort property, but if a guest brought a boat, they'd have to go to the public dock, put it in, and then moor it at the dock overnight, and so they could boat all day and come back and sleep at night. That's the idea of it.
And there's control or no control over that with the township and the zoning ordinance?
The zoning ordinance has a provision,
Yeah, so our previous zoning ordinance, and this was something that I asked Nicole about today for clarification, our previous zoning ordinance did not allow prohibited a multi-boat access site for non-single-family residential uses. One clarification that Nicole communicated was that provision or that standard would not apply to, would not regulate boats that are coming in and out of the public access. Does that make sense?
So because they're coming in and out of the public access, it doesn't relate to that number that you're talking about.
right, so, yeah, they only have a spot for 10 overnight, basically, boats, because that's what they had historically. So they could moor 10 boats there. And so the guests, if they have 12 boats that are guests, then you can have 10 of them more overnight, but the other 2 have to be trailered back and parked by the unit. If that makes sense to everybody.
Okay, you keep saying the boat would be overnight. What if they're staying there for 3-4 weeks? Does that allow that same boat? Then it isn't overnight, it's the amount of time they're there?
It's for the overnight guests, yeah, we clarify the overnight guests versus regular public, so you going there, if you're not staying at the resort, shouldn't be mooring your boat on that area. It's for overnight guest use only.
Okay, well, I was trying to figure out all this. What they're asking for, they can already do. The only thing, there's probably more to it than this, but the only thing that I can think of is they have turned units into rent overnight stay illegally, correct?
Correct.
And so their agreement is, and we would drop the ticket, if we let them go by this agreement, rather than just say, fix the problem. I mean, I see this thing, and I'm not looking at it correctly, I'm sure, because I'm just, first time I've ever seen it. But I'm thinking, they can have the boats, they can remodel the cabins, they can move the cabins. So all of this is brought on, or something I'm not getting.
Well,
That's the problem.
I think part
This
of-
whole thing- Let me finish.
Yeah.
This whole thing is brought on because they converted a garage into living quarters to rent out. Basically, or what else is there?
There was other violations that we had identified. One is that they were renting out boats from the resort to non-guests, non-overnight guests. And so that was part of our concern and that we wanted to address with the settlement agreement, was ensuring that there wasn't this kind of public marina operation, that any type of boat use was by the overnight guests of the resort. So that was another important item that we wanted to address. The other important item, I think, with this settlement agreement is just making sure that we have the detailed survey done within 180 days, and that we have the opportunity to go on site and inspect it and make sure that there's no beds, there's no ovens, there's nothing in any of those units that are not to be used as dwelling units. So that was something that we've been trying to get on the property. We issued the ticket, we've been kind of wading through this process, but I think that that's also another important element of this settlement agreement, is that it allows staff to get on site, because we haven't had that opportunity yet.
Okay, but if we take them to court, they don't want to pay that, we take them to court, we can get that at the court. We don't need to have a big agreement.
But understand, remember, I mean, you can get things by the judge ordering something, but you can also get it through engagement with the other party, and that's what we're doing. And so we're getting all of those things that we should be getting without the judge's declaration, so to speak, correct?
Right. We're basically getting what I believe that what the township wants and needs without having to have the uncertainty in front of a judge. Unfortunately, as strong as of a case that we have, that I think we would win with everything that we have, judges can be unpredictable. They might have a whim, they might just not want to deal with it. I can't say for certain what a judge is going to, if a judge is going to say, yes, township, you're right, no, township, you're wrong. I think that we have a good case, but I also think that the settlement agreement gets us what we want without having that uncertainty in front of a judge.
And again, this isn't, I take a little bit of an issue with the term settlement agreement, because settlement agreement, to me, just from a layperson's perspective, conveys the idea of, okay, well, we settled somewhere in between, right? And this township has done that in previous, lawsuits before, and all board members are well aware of that. But this is not that case. We're not saying we're settling somewhere in between. Well, yeah, the ordinance says you should do this, but we're going to let you not do this because of this agreement. That's not the case. What we're outlining is what is their lawful nonconforming, so that is documented, cemented, and forever known going forward.
I believe that there's been a lot of complaints about the legal nonconforming use as well. And so that this is trying to kind of outline what that process is and what that legal nonconforming use is, and what they can and cannot do on that property, basically.
And ensures that they are meeting the zoning ordinance where it is legally applicable. So we're not settling for anything. Actually, if you did have a judge issue something with the ticket, like if the property owner just said, forget you, and you had the judge make them comply, this is what you would be wanting out of the judge,
Yes.
the judge's order.
But, plus some fines and costs, but that's neither here nor there.
One other quick question that bugged me, it has nothing to do with the settlement. But when I looked up the property, Main Avenue, and the other street isn't named, I guess, says that they're East Bay.
Says what?
They belong to East Bay Township. Is that correct? I didn't know.
The roads within there?
In the counties, will you go on there and look at
Yeah.
any property?
Oh, the street index that they have
Yeah.
online? That's not always accurate, though. I have found that to be the
I'm just
case.
asking.
No, I know, I go to that source too to look up stuff, but I don't take it as the be-all, end-all. What's
I
that?
think it is a public road.
It is a public road?
I would have to double check. Was it a public
I
road?
don't know off the top of my head if it's a public road or not.
Are there, am I missing anything to cover? Oh, go ahead.
When we get the survey, I'm curious on units 8 and 9. According to this page 4 of 5, it says that those structures are actually in the road. And I would want to make sure that we're not agreeing to any structures that are I don't know if that's true or not, right? Because this is a line on a piece of paper, but, you've got both those units that are going past what is documented as the property line.
Yep, so you're seeing that they are on the possibly platted road, which is not necessarily a developed road in the area. So,
That and the boathouse.
yep. I would have to look at the plat to see if that is even there anymore, or if it was a paper road, or if it was vacated, or anything like that, to do that, so.
Right, I just
Yep.
want to make sure that we aren't agreeing to something.
So units 8 and 9 would stay where they are, but being in a,
But if that's because that one on 8 looks like it's a deck coming off there, I think it needs, we need to look at that. It's on this one.
Well, again, it will depend on if that road, like you said, is vacated, is
Exactly, we need to
public.
look at it when the survey's done to see what's going on here, because
Yeah.
on that drawing, it looks like there's a problem. On this drawing of the exact same thing, it doesn't show the same problem, except for on the boathouse.
yep, and we'll make a note to look at that when we get the amended drawing, the amended survey. Then we go into the settlement. Do you have anybody have any more questions? Do you want me to continue going through it all, or?
I mean, to Mindy's point, item 3B in the settlement talks about Cool shall provide a revised and updated survey, which shall then be attached and incorporated hereto as Exhibit C. Is that implying that it is virtually approved and incorporated once it's completed, or does the township, somebody at the township get a chance to look at it and agree with it before it's incorporated?
Well, we don't approve of surveys, so to speak, but
Right.
what Claire mentioned is they now have the ability to go on to the property to ensure that zoning compliance is achieved.
Yeah. So the survey will just show an updated
Okay.
of what's there on the property and where it is. So if there is an issue where a structure is blocking an easement of some sort, whether it's a platted road or what, that'll show, and then we can, we'll have that on the survey. We can go out to the property and look at it to see if there's any other issues, with compliance with the zoning ordinance. I believe that those platted streets are vacated and/or never were accepted by the township and were never improved as such roads. But we would have to double check on that, so.
Did you want to complete through the agreement?
So the next section, we've kind of talked about replacement and maintenance and the compliance and inspection. The next section would be setback and hot tub conformance. The amended survey is going to identify the 50-foot setback from the ordinary high water mark from the lake, which is something that we've needed to make sure, the existing hot tub will be outside of this 50-foot setback. If the survey finds that the existing hot tub is within that, it's going to be moved out of it, to come into compliance with the zoning ordinance. And then the area around the hot tub may include 600 square feet of pavers that are going to be able to be drained, like in between. So it's not completely cement, but it'll be able to drain that area, so it's a little patio. And the pavers cannot encroach more than 8 feet into the 50-foot setback. So there's some encroachment there, but that has been there, I believe, historically as well, for a long time. So vegetation and screening is something that the zoning ordinance requires, so they're going to install and maintain native vegetation around any equipment located on the west side of the boathouse to minimize visual impact. Obviously, the boathouse has been there for a long time. It can stay there, but to minimize the visual impact of some of the stuff in the boathouse, the native vegetation will help with that. So, the laundry and boathouse use. So these are two of the other buildings that were made into dwellings illegally. The existing laundry building may continue to serve as a laundry facility for the resort. And then the boathouse may continue to serve as resort guests by providing them equipment and supplies, which is all been historically done in the past as well. But it's only for resort guests. So you as a member of the public can't go to the boathouse and buy a Pepsi or a Coke, but if you're staying there overnight, you can. So it's for resort guests. It's like
So they won't be coming off the lake and stopping to
exactly.
pick up snacks or whatever.
Exactly, it's for resort guests only. Then we've talked about the boat and dock use, and then the conformance with zoning and other regulations. So all new or replacement structures, improvements, or uses authorized shall comply with the applicable zoning ordinance provisions, any other township, state, federal laws, regulations, rules. That's kind of standard. So if they're remodeling something, they have to get building permits. If they're gonna, anything like that. So.
Question on that. It said all new. Can they build more on that property? I thought it was non-conforming, they couldn't do that.
So when they amend the units 11, 12, 13, 14, when they're amending those are going to be new because the existing ones might not have buildings on them right now. That's part of it.
So they would build new ones to replace those, is what you're saying?
Right. Right. That's the new part.
Technically, the way the ordinance now, you couldn't do that. You couldn't build new ones. You could fix the old ones, but you couldn't build new ones if I read the ordinance right.
So I can make one clarification that Nicole has kind of communicated with us is the differentiation between the non-conforming use and a non-conforming structure. So cabin court is a non-conforming use. It doesn't necessarily have non-conforming structures. So the structures are not necessarily encroaching into the setback. They're not larger than they should be. And so kind of the legal guidance that we have been given is that they can build new structures so long as they are an accessory use to the cabin court.
Okay.
That's,
So, and when they're talking about this, the new or replacement structures, they're talking about the units 11, 12, 13, 14. I think that's what that is part of the agreement. If they wanted to put a sauna on the property, that could be classified as an accessory use to the resort, as the non-conforming cabin court use. So that's something to think about. But that new sauna structure, if you will, would have to comply with all of the zoning stuff. And so if you have a percentage of coverage for a lot and they're already there, you can't put more structures on there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And they can't expand the lawful nonconforming.
and they cannot expand the lawful non-conforming use.
Thank you.
And again, it goes back to number 4, which says that the size must stay the same.
So currently on site, if I'm looking at sheet 3 of 5, 11, 12, 13, and 14 are concrete slabs with no structures on them, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So what is the definition of a dwelling structure?
You have a bed, a kitchen, bathroom,
So how are those dwelling structures if there's no structure on them?
because those were used historically speaking, those were used for RVs or campers, things along that nature, and that is no longer a use that is allowed under the zoning ordinance, correct? This is,
I'm
You
not
can't- you
sure.
can't
that
camp
we've-
there.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we've changed the zoning, but.
So my concern or my statement is this. When I go camping with and I have a concrete pad, my structure does not encompass that entire concrete pad. So I'm concerned that we are gonna actually be expanding because that pad is larger than a trailer. Because, you know, you look at these building envelopes of this concrete pad, if you look at figure 5 of 5, if you're looking at 11, you're talking about a 22-foot wide, I'm sorry, that cannot go down the road.
But there's still it's land use too, remember?
But that's not a dwelling structure.
it might not be a dwelling structure, but I believe in the past that there were, was it campers or was it mobile homes that were there?
I think they were a permanent.
They were
So they
permanent,
were like a park
Double
model.
wide.
yeah, yes, in the past. I know I've seen pictures of the property that I obviously don't have in front of me right now that had,
Because I'm thinking travel trailer that.
yep.
Yeah, but if you go to like to Timber Ridge, or, yeah,
The park models.
they have the park models that are technically movable because they're still on a trailer base, but they are pretty permanent.
I'm just thinking that those 4 building envelopes are quite large, especially when you compare them to the other 10 that are on site. They are significantly larger than the other 10. So they would be, I guess, I can't really read this, but it looks like number 6 might be almost 2,000 square feet.
That's a good question, though. So the existing condition for 11 through 14 is just a concrete slab out there right now? So at what point, I know it mentions in the settlement agreement, something that they did not abandon the use of any of its structures or the 14 dwelling structures, but it doesn't sound like there's 4 dwelling structures out there to account for that.
So in the, historically speaking, there was 14, and those concrete pads had
Right.
something on them.
But
So that's-
historically, like, was this in, when did they?
I don't have that number, that year off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
I mean, I know that in 2008, when they were condominiumized, there were those 14 units that could be rented. And part of our ordinance, the way that we define abandonment is not necessarily, oh, there's nothing there, and so that was abandoned. There has to be an intent, and so there's kind of specific standards that we evaluate an intent to abandon. And so, in working with legal counsel, it was determined that there was no intent to abandon those 14.
Do we know how many buildings are not there that we're showing as numbered pads?
You mean that,
All of those is
that
all-
had the trailers, or that
Huh?
that had the trailers, you mean? The pads that had the trailers?
Yeah, whatever.
Was it
It's 11 through 14.
11 through 14. Yeah. Which is why they want to,
They're not,
they want to amend 11 through 14. That's part of the reason why they want to do that.
one of them will be the garage.
Yeah.
So they're only going to move 3 of them, and the 4th one is going into the garage building.
And the movement of them becomes, even though it's lawful non-conforming, the movement of them complies more with the current spacing.
Makes them
of
more
the current-
conforming than.
More conforming. Okay, so what would the normal process be? Because we were just taking a very detailed look at this as an example of an enforcement. So normal enforcement, we talked about alleged violation, the investigation into a violation, working with the owner to bring about compliance, and in this case, it involved a ticket, and you're working, the parties are working together to come in, for that property owner to come into compliance. What would the normal process then be?
The normal process would be either to enter into a consent agreement or a settlement agreement, however you guys want to talk, however you want to label it, or go to the formal hearing and have the judge decide. We always try to work with the defendants to try to get them to comply. You know, it's easier, it's, you know, they do it more willingly that way, you know, instead of having someone tell them to do it. And so the normal course of process would be that they'd enter into it. Either myself would sign the consent agreement, or someone at the planning and zoning department, or sometimes the supervisor will sign the agreements. And then we'd file it with the court or dismiss the ticket and, you know, go on and follow that until they either don't comply with it and we reissue a ticket, or they do comply with it and we can move on and we can close our internal file as it's complied with.
Okay.
Did
Now, go ahead.
did they not have a ticket yet?
Yes, they have a ticket, yes.
They have a ticket. How long ago did they get it? Any idea?
I think we issued it in August.
In August?
Yes, I think it was August. Was it sometime this summer?
No, I mean, this isn't something they got a ticket a year ago.
No, it's been within the last 6 months
Okay.
that they've gotten the ticket. Now,
It has-
we've been getting complaints, the township's been getting complaints and investigating and trying to do this for years.
Right.
But the enforcement process, starting with the ticket and letters of violation and stuff, that has been fairly recent.
Okay.
So then it looks like Cool Hand Holdings has, on their half, they've agreed to this. You're just looking for the township to say yes, sign it?
And
or-
actually, I'm not. When I wrote the agenda, was not thinking of some of the finer points and did write that, you know, I think I put on here, possible action in open session.
Yeah, there's really no action.
But there really is no action because as Nicole has mentioned, and of course I'm like, yes, that makes sense, is that ordinance enforcement is an administrative duty. It is not, let me just throw out a bunch of things. It is not, ordinance enforcement is not the public's responsibility. That is not the board's responsibility because it should not take on a political style nature. It takes on a very dedicated, precise process. And that's the way it should stay. If the board chooses to, they can absolutely tell me not to sign this or direct me to sign it. They can choose to do that. But what I will say is we would be operating outside of the standard norms at that point. And typically what we try to do is, I'm trying to think of where this came up last time, but we try to do what is required by statute and by ordinance and policy, so that we don't later say, you know, they make a decision on an enforcement and somebody comes back and says, well, you didn't take that one to the board. So we try to be consistent. So really, this was more information sharing and to see if any board members, because does mean a lot to a lot of people. If you have any questions or see this issue differently or have any qualms with how planning and zoning and legal counsel have brought this or are bringing this into compliance.
So what you're asking for is either the board to approve or deny the agreement, no?
No,
It's just for information.
yeah, it's for information. And again, are there any issues with how planning and zoning has and legal counsel have applied the enforcement and are bringing about compliance? Again, the compliance is not finite at this point. it's a process. And again, you've seen the 180 days in the packet.
Okay.
So, any questions or suggestions, changes with that? The board, are there any issues with the planning and zoning proceeding with this enforcement as it's presented?
I don't know that we can make any changes because he's already agreed to it.
Oh, you certainly still can,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, no, it looks fine to me, but.
And if the board has any suggestions on how enforcement goes, the process goes forward or anything, you can certainly make those suggestions or make a policy for how enforcements are handled and who is able to enter into these kind of agreements as well, if you so wish. You don't have to, but you can, so.
I guess my personal opinion would be that you get the ticket and you go through the court and not agree to anything. I mean, what I look at is when we're running into this stuff, we start agreeing, all it does is bring more of those type of things forward. Because if they can get agreement to do something maybe they normally shouldn't do, they're winning.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. So my concern is, whatever they can do, use by rights, that's fine. If they can't do it use by rights, then if they're in violation, they need to be issued it. Not run out there first day and issue the ticket. Talk to them. If they decide they're not gonna do anything, then by all means, issue the ticket and let's go forward through the court system. I
So
think
then
the
we
more
need-
those that go forward through the court system,
But what you're saying is correct. If you allow somebody to do something and then that becomes easier the next time down the road. But again, in this case, we're not allowing that. We are getting the optimal decision by the court, so to speak. If we got exactly what Nicole would want a judge to say, that's what's there. That's what this agreement is.
no, the thing is, we're coming up with agreement that they can do all the stuff that I'm told that they can do use by rights. I don't,
Right. Okay, go ahead.
but if they're in violation, they need to be brought in and abide by what the ordinance is. If they want to do other stuff, that's a whole nother issue.
Right. And remember that part of the court process, when you issue tickets, the courts like to have the parties talk and try to settle it out. Try to settle it outside of the judge having to decide that. That's part of the court process. So you are seeing the court process in front of you. You just didn't see the judge tell us to go and talk to each other, like we had, 2 weeks ago. So, but this is very much part of the court process. So.
Okay.
Did you have something else?
Well, if we don't have this in front of us, we actually have to issue more tickets to get this, right? Because we only have a ticket for the boathouse, but we would need one for the hot tub, and we would need one for
Correct.
the laundry and the
The 4
garage,
units.
and, you know, there's a bunch more tickets that would have to be issued to get to this settlement agreement,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
We might not have all of them listed, but it,
I look at this as kind of your finding of facts. I mean, this is what, and I'm just using that as an example. I mean, this is what you have to do to come into compliance, and that's what the court's going to tell you, or the judge is going to tell you. And we've just done the mediation part without being told to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Regarding, Nicole, part of the complaints that we receive on this property have to do with the boat traffic. So, could you explain the ability or potential limited ability to affect that?
So like on boat traffic on the lake, like itself? Or?
Yes, like there'll be like, well, there's too many boats on the lake, they're all from those renters, or they're going too fast, or they're operating in a dangerous manner, which none of us like to see or hear about.
No, the township doesn't have really any authority to regulate boat traffic on the lakes. That's the DNR. The state has that authority. You can petition the DNR to do a no-wake zone and to have ordinances enforced on the lakes. That tends not to go very well. I mean, you can try, certainly try and to do it. I've had a couple other municipalities where they try to do that, and the DNR's like, you don't really need that there. But you have public access to the lakes. It's not a private lake, so you can't regulate how many boats are on the lakes. You can get maybe a sheriff's deputy or a marine patrol deputy to patrol the lakes, to make sure that the boats are operating in safe manners, they're not, they're not causing wakes in a no-wake zone, that type of thing.
And I have asked that. I have talked with, just for my board members' knowledge, I have talked with the sheriff, who was very responsive, talked with his Marine Division, and asked him to patrol in that area. Of course, there are many places to patrol. We live in a place with a lot of lakes, and they have limited personnel resources. So, but that, beyond that, are there any steps that could be taken that I'm not seeing?
Not that I'm aware of, off the top of my head. I could do some research, but the best bet is to try to petition the DNR to put more regulations on the lakes, if you need more regulations. But then you go into who's going to enforce those.
Who's going to enforce it, yeah.
And, you're relying on your sheriff's department to enforce those regulations, or the DNR to enforce those regulations.
And there are some no-wake areas of that lake. I'm not familiar very specifically where they are, but there are some. Okay.
So,
Any other questions for Nicole and Claire? And thank you for this in-depth look at enforcement.
I guess just kind of a final comment from me. The skeptic in me always questions, I know you said this isn't really a settlement agreement per se, where the township is settling. This is just wrapping known issues into a kind of a formalized document, handling them all as one, as opposed to kind of piecemeal.
Yeah, I would say, when I say it's not a settlement agreement, what I'm saying is we're not giving on any of the terms.
I would argue, I think Mindy brought up a very good point, that with, especially the units 11 through 14, how did we determine, because it does state in here explicitly, item number 4 in this agreement, that provided that the footprint of any replacement structure shall not exceed the existing footprint, or where no structure presently exists, the dimensional envelope shown on the amended survey. I mean, I think to Mindy's point, I mean, this is, could be, depending on how it's interpreted, a bit of an expansion here, because it seems unreasonable that, if each of these concrete pads that are sitting there, and y'all determined that they were never abandoned, there was never any intent to abandon.
to your point, the concrete slabs
Yeah.
are the footprint of anything that would be on that area.
So you're assuming that and y'all verified through the old photographs that the existing mobile homes or whatever that were on there fully encompassed corner to corner.
The footprint would be the concrete pad. Whether the thing on it was a tent or anything else. It's the footprint of the unit of how they condominiumized it is the concrete pad. That makes a little bit more sense?
Not really, because they haven't been using them as a structure. They haven't been occupying them for we don't know how long.
But the potential was there, and so they didn't want, they didn't, and that's why they say they didn't abandon that.
They didn't tear up the concrete pad.
Right, but the intent was there for those to be rented, when they had the money to put something on there, or, something like that, so that the intent was there, so that's why they haven't abandoned those 4 units, and the 4 units footprints are the concrete pad.
But that process, and we talked about this earlier in this conversation, that process to condominiumize them, did not have to go through the township.
Correct, because.
Was this a loophole?
It's a change of ownership, so I can deed my property to my children.
Right.
You guys don't have to deal with that. It's a change in ownership. It's not like they were creating something new, because the.
How did the pads get installed? Did anybody approve those pads getting installed?
In the
those were back
50s
in
before
the-
there was zoning.
There was no zoning.
guess I'm just confused, but you said it was solidified
So
through them
this-
being
this-
condominiumized?
This cabin court use
Yep,
started in the 50s.
yep,
Okay, and continued until today.
yep,
In the 2008, the type of ownership for the condominium use changed,
okay,
which is where we got the survey from. So we have some kind of idea of where structures are on the property.
right,
So that's the only reason why the condominiumization 2008 is coming into effect, because it's showing us on that, so we're using that survey. Otherwise, we're going back to the 50s before zoning, and they're using this as a cabin court, and they have different rental units and all of that.
And in 2022 is when we amended the ordinance to no longer allow cabin courts.
Mhm.
So prior to 2022, they were in compliance with zoning.
okay.
Any other further comments or questions?
It's cold in here.
Okay, well, we will allow, unless there's any further direction from the board, we'll allow planning and zoning and our legal counsel to continue to enforce this issue with respect to this property and the court system and the agreement between them. Okay? All right. With that, we will move on to, did Claire or Nicole, did you have anything further too? I asked board members, but did you?
No, do you want me to stay for the budget amendments?
No, you're good.
Unless you got some money with it.
Claire, you don't need to stay. Claire. You've got 2 kids at home and today was your vacation day, so,
Yep.
okay.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, very much appreciate you being here. Okay, with this, we'll move to, onto the budget amendments. You'll know we usually always have a meeting the last couple days of the year to get any of those budget amendments. And the first page, in this, you'll see those categorized. This is all one budget amendment, but those are the line items that it's broken out across. And I did put attached to it, highlighted in orange, why each of those, what I saw, where those were needed. So let me just quickly say, when we're looking at the 000 department, that is because because of the ability to transfer money from the receiving fund on water and sewers part for my time that is spent with BPW, DPW, engineering, water and sewer issues, lift station number 1, which has been considerable, particularly this past year. That was not in the budget. It is for 2026, so I have amended that to show that we could transfer that amount. On assessing in 257, an increase for 9,000, but that's across several line items, you'll see. And some of that is due to the postage, which we hadn't had in there previous to that because it was through the county. And also the education, where we do have somebody going through the MAAO and accommodating for those costs. The 446 with the road projects, you'll remember that we entered into an agreement with DTE and Pine Grove to do half of the road, where they did the other half of the road. And then we had cleaning of that roundabout vegetation. Let's see, in item 702, bumping a little.
623.
I'm sorry, that was, yep, that was 623 for the roads. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 446, thank you, Tracy. That was 446. 623 is that trail, the trails there. Now, it's not anything that's expanded beyond what the Township Board has approved with the OHM and the Prine and Newhalf contracts, but it is related more to the timing of those.
Yep.
So, they come in and it's like, does it fit in 25, 24, 26? It's the cadence of how that engineering work is done and the speed of it that necessitates which fiscal year that it falls in. Now to 702, which is planning and zoning. I have an additional expense there. I don't think I need it, but I want to be a little bit careful there for legal expense and attorney, because I don't have some of those final bills in. And clearly you can see, we make sure that when we're working with planning and zoning, that we are on a solid legal foundation. And on 770, we do have quite a few, and that is just primarily related to, let's see, I'm trying to remember if the lightning strike hit in there or not, and I can't recall, but there were a couple line items with just some smaller amounts. The Facilities and Recreation Director, which we did look at and have included in a budget, but for some reason it wasn't hitting that line item there, so accommodating for that there. And then when you go down to the 206, that is the revenue for property taxes for the fire department. And what you'll notice there is that we only have one value in and one value out. And because that was just slightly lower, the revenue, we need to make that adjustment because more obviously is used. Let me find that page real quick, 206. So like originally we showed, it clearing like 12 grand, and we'll go to like 1,600 use of the fund balance, which we do have in there. So we need to make sure we adjust the revenues when it's the sole only revenue that's there. I believe that is it. I know Tracy and I emailed a little bit later in the day about the 850, and she thinks that we're good there. You're right, we do have the 817 that will be, we're doing just a break even basically for $4, and we'll be into 817 into fund balance, which is fine there. But I probably would ask the board, and Tracy, I didn't even get a chance to respond to your email, but I would ask the board that on the budget adjustments, that we would include a budget adjustment of, let's see, we are spending less than we anticipated, so we're fine there. But I will ask the board to adjust those revenues across those three line items so that it equals to the 4,800, showing that you've approved that we use the 817 in that fund balance. Does everybody see that on the 850? It's the very
Page
last.
12 of 12.
Yeah, page 12 out of 12, it's the very last page. And you'll see down at the bottom, are you on, I think one more, maybe? A couple more, I think, maybe. There you go, that's it. So over there on the second to the last, to the right column, you'll see a negative 817.54. That equates to, right here, that equates to a use of fund balance. And so what I want to do is ask that we include an adjustment of the lower revenue in the budget amendments to the exact amount of 480229 in total. And then that way, showing the board has approved that use of the fund balance so that the auditors have no issue with it. And that's really the rationale for these, is so make sure the auditor knows that the board is aware of these things. You will look and find some other departments where we are close or we're slightly over. That's okay. They're very limited in scope, and we're able to take care of that through accommodation through the General Appropriations Act, where we have the ability to administratively adjust that. These are the ones that extend beyond the scope of our administrative ability. I'll also let you know, we are looking pretty good for this year in our projected year end. Let's see, let me find the very last page of the 101 real quick. Here we go. We were projected to clear about 300,000. We will do, should do more of that with some of the revenue that's coming in too. It doesn't show in this year-to-date balance, but we've got like another 200 and some thousand yet that will come in for, let's see, where are those revenues? For our state revenue sharing, our cable franchise fees, we still have another month's worth of interest, so some of those things. So we still have a good bit coming in. So the adjustment of all of those that I mentioned to you is about 124,000, and we're fine making those adjustments. So that,
Still have more.
yeah, we're still good with that. Are there any questions on the budget amendments for the year end? Is there any issue, does anyone have an issue with adjusting or adding to the proposed budget amendment, the Fund 850 for the 3 revenue line items totaling, bringing that to 480229? Okay, I will do that and add that. So what I would ask is that we would approve the presented fiscal year 2025 year-end adjustments with the added adjustment for Fund 850.
Support. Made their motion.
Support.
Okay, there is it is moved by Walters and supported by Cook. Are there other questions on that? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by no? Okay, show that the motion passes unanimously. Thank you for going through that, and hopefully that will make our auditors happy come April. And yeah, and if you don't notice when you look through the budget, I budget pretty close. And I don't know that that always makes
Not always good.
staff super happy, and I don't know, sure it always makes our auditor super happy, but I kind of like to know right where we're at. So thinking I have all the other ones notched up, but I am not saying you might not have an auditor say, you had one department that was overdrawn by $500, but you should not see that. We've looked over everything this past year to try to accommodate for everything as it comes in. Because remember, while we're closing out this year, we'll still see another 2 months' worth of bills coming
Yep.
in. So, all right. With that, public comment. And seeing there's no public comment, but our former attorney here, thank you. And you have no choice of being here either, right? Our next meeting is January 12th of 2026. I will not be here January 12th, so I appreciate it when you guys meet, just pick a chair and go through it. And it's pretty much a regular report meeting. Your decisions, you'll have decisions, but it'll be more limited in scope. And that's it. Everybody, have a happy new year.
Thanks, you too.
Have a safe and happy.
Have
Yeah.
a safe